And the mission is up on the screen. I'm not going to read it for you, but you can read that silently to yourself. But what I would like to say about the Peel Center is that we are the Parent Training and Information Center in the state of Pennsylvania. And so we are statewide and serve families and youth across the state. I work out of the Philadelphia office. We have an office in Pittsburgh, and we have colleagues in the central part of the state as well. What that means to be a PTI, a Parent Training and Information Center, means that we help and guide families through the special education system, understanding their rights, the processes, forms, anything that has to do with special education, as well as providing trainings like we are doing today. And we also provide that service as a one-on-one, so we talk to families one-on-one, helping them and guiding them, whether that be, over the phone, through email, and now sometimes even through Zoom with our new technology here that we've been utilizing. So I am very happy to be here presenting with my colleague here, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Stadnick. I am a parent advisor out in the Pittsburgh office, and I'm happy to be with you all today and working here with Diane to talk about the importance of friendship.
Great. So we first want to start off with a poll. So hopefully some of you may have a phone that you might want to participate that way as far as responding as a text message, or you can also utilize your computer and go to the website at the bottom there at the www.pollev.com/JaneBrin240. So whichever one is easiest for you. So if you want to take 1 minute to either do the texting or go to the website. I know Brianna has put those instructions into the chat as well. So I'll give you 1 minute or 2 minutes to get your phone out or to get to the website. And once you get there, here is the question. Who do we have with us today? You'll do A as a family member, B for professional, C for both family and professional, or maybe you're a youth or young adult. And I see everybody is starting to put in their responses. As you see, the circle is changing as you make your selections. Looks like the circle has kind of slowed down. Just wanted to, oh, okay, we still have a few more. All right, I'll give it another minute or two to see if there's anybody else. Okay. So it looks like the majority are professionals in our audience, but it's great to see that we have a nice selection of family members, or actually you're wearing both those hats, because actually I wear both those hats as well. Not only do I work at the Peel Center, but I'm also the parent of a young man who was born with a lifelong disability and also went through the special education system. So you'll be hearing from me a little bit about the stories about my son David as well, as we talk about friendships and relationships. And it's great to have some of the youth and young adults in the audience as well. I'm thinking a lot of them that you may be students as with that at the colleges, which is awesome. And then we also had family members. So welcome to everybody. Hey, Jane.
Getting my mute off, you know how that works for us.
Oh, yeah.
So today we're just going to, our purpose here in this session is to not only introduce the Friendship Toolkit, which is a resource that we have here at the Peel Center. You can find that downloadable here at the Peel Center website under inclusion. Also, it should be in your program. But not only we're going to go through this, but part of what we want to do here today is introduce you to ways to encourage friendships for all. So part of what we do is kind of a brainstorming session with all of us. We love to kind of have the hive mind and brainstorm about why friendship is important and important to everyone. It's our hope that we're going to introduce the principles and philosophies about the importance of friendship development with people with disabilities. And one of the things we often find as we go through this is, identifying barriers to friendships. We're going to review and discuss 3 guiding principles that we use to develop this toolkit. They are, that everyone has a role to play in the development of friendships. Friendships are important to all, and everybody benefits from friendship development. So everybody benefits when we support everyone. We're also going to review strategies for active friendship facilitation, and those relevant to your role. So we're going to go through all of the roles. That's the reason we took the poll. And we'll also generate additional strategies across the 6 elements which are in the friendship toolkit.
Sorry, I was playing around with my computer and it ended up advancing the screen.
That's how Diane does me, guys, just so you know. But really, so covered today, we just want to make it clear that everything we put into this friendship toolkit was part of a parent advisory panel. So this has a lot of parent input and also a lot of youth and young adult with disabilities input. So as we go through here, know that these were not something we just pulled out of research books, but what we got from parents and youth and young adults with disabilities. Go ahead, Diane. All righty. So also, like Diane, I am a parent of a young man with a disability. Actually, he is in this picture with his best friend, and I bring this up because he talked to him last night. His friend is a world traveler now and is living for a year in Madeira, Mexico. So they've been Skyping since he moved to Boston. So in this world of, kind of like forced isolation, he was able to, with technology, reach out to his friend and had a conversation. Of I didn't listen in. I don't What teenage boys talk about is really not in my wheelhouse to understand. So what I want you to do, though, is think about relationships that you have had, a relationship with your best friend. And I'm going to ask you to look through these questions. So, like, how did you meet? How do you maintain your friendship? Are there barriers to spending time together? And I want you to place that in the chat. We're kind of monitoring the chat. So think about your BFF, your best friends, and think about some of these questions and pick out 1 or 2 to answer if you want, and go ahead and put them in the chat. And then after we put those in the chat, if somebody wants to raise their hand, I'll pick 1 or 2 people to talk about their best friend. Okay, so go ahead and put some of those in the chat. I'll give you a few minutes here.
I'm trying to pull up the chat. That's what and every time I click to try and find, oh, here it is. I found it.
There it is. It's in there.
Now okay, I found the chat.
Okay.
Without moving the next screen.
That's good, Cyan. So let's start with, how did you meet? So how about everybody can put in there. There we go. Awesome. Thank you. A few more. What do you do together? How long's your friendship been? I have a friendship I started when we were before kindergarten. We were in preschool together, and we live about 16 hours away from each other now, but we still manage to touch base,
Yeah.
via phone or um, something like that. So,
Yeah, I have actually two best friends. I grew up with them actually. So, we went to the same elementary school together. We spent a lot of time when we were younger, and life changes as we all got older and had kids, but we are still strong, even though there might be, you know, months or maybe sometimes a year or so where we don't even talk to each other. We know instantly as soon as we have that first conversation, it's just like family, it's that instant connection. We continue to have that bond even through all the life stuff that we've been through. But yeah, I think for me and my two girlfriends, it's mainly phone calls and texting, and when we can, we try and get together. But it does get hard.
hmm
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it does. And I know Diane, as a parent of a child with a disability, um, sometimes that can be difficult, right? So especially, if you're running your child to and fro or doctor's appointments or things like that, to really maintain those, you have to really work on a friendship. You
Mm-hmm.
really do have to put some time and effort into it. So as I'm looking through the chat box, I see that um, you know busy schedules are barriers, right? We just talked a little bit about that. Um, some of these our participants have had like lifelong friendships, right? Their kids know each other now. Um, you know, and you manage to maintain it by phone calls, and now like social media, I know, is a big thing. Um, does anybody want to raise their hand and talk a little bit about their friendship?
And if you don't know how to raise your hand, I believe if you go to the participant list, there should be an option for you to just click on and say raise hand. Because this is going to be interactive. So this is getting you warmed up for when we get a little bit further into our presentation. So we're going to encourage the 20 people that are here, or 21 people that are here, to text or raise your hand. I mean, not text, but in the chat.
Getting our technologies mixed up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's another barrier that Alyssa just put into the chat, that they live far from each other. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Distance.
distance is a big one. That we found that, as we developed this friendship for my son, that when he moved to Boston, which was his first move, we were struggling to how they were going to maintain that really great friendship they that we facilitated, but they in turn created and moved forward with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so we won't put
All
anybody
right.
on the spot, Diane, but
No,
we can go ahead and move through.
but be forewarned. Sometimes, when I'm doing presentations in person, I do kind of like to call out a person or two. So, hopefully you guys will be comfortable with that. We'll see. Anyway, let's move on. All right. Of course, now nothing wants to move, right? Oops. Now we go too far. Here we go. All right.
There we are.
So let's talk about some foundations to relationships. And I'm going to talk about three individuals that really had an impact when we were putting this tool together, this booklet together for everyone. And I do hope everyone does take the opportunity to go to our website and either download this booklet or maybe send us an email and order it, and we'd be more than happy to send it to you, because it has really some very good, fruitful information in it. And one of the people I want to first talk about is Al Condalucci. Now, perhaps some of you have heard of Al, or even maybe have heard him speak. Al is actually from Pittsburgh and is an internationally recognized authority on the importance of relationships in people's lives. And he uses this term social capital in describing the importance and strength of connections within our communities. And, we just kind of talked about, our friendships. So talking about how we are part of a community, when you find your friend, when you're in wherever you found your best friend, it's usually in some type of community, whether it be, family or neighborhood or college. There was a couple around that. And that's like you're developing a social capital in your lives. And if anybody ever does have the opportunity to hear Al, he is a very energetic, has your attention the whole time speaker, one of those very engaging presenters. And he does also share a personal story about his cousin. And, he lived in the mountains of Pittsburgh. And if I remember correctly, I believe he's of Italian descent. So there's many of the Condalucci's out there that he talks about. And, his cousin had a disability. And he talks about how all the cousins really didn't know that she had a disability because she was just part of this community, right? We just, include and do whatever. And she was just part of the community. This is all that we did. It was very natural. It was like these natural supports for her, even though she experienced a disability. It wasn't something that they talked about or had to do something. It was just everybody helps out each other. So he talks about that community, what brings you to the table. There's a common interest, things like that. And then we have Robert Waldinger. Robert Waldinger is a clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And he directed this Harvard study of adult development. And I really encourage anybody to look up this TED Talk. It is very, very interesting and has some very good information in there. But basically, what the result is that, we took our theme around the good life is built around good relationships, because throughout the study, there were different things that came out of this study. So first of all, it was the longest study done on happiness. And that's exactly what this is. It was a happiness study done. It was a TED Talk. And he talks about the results of it. And when I say longest, it's 75 years. That's how long this was done. And they actually followed 724 men year after year, and all the way up until most of them were in their 90s. And they participated in this study throughout all of those years. And 3 major findings came out of that. One was that social connections make us healthier and happier, which then on the opposite means isolation causes depression and possibly earlier death, which is what they found actually with some of the results from when the participants would give their information on these studies. The second finding was, it is not the number of friends, but the quality of that relationship that really matters. It is the knowledge that you can count on your friend or partner. And I know somebody else put it in the chat there too, that, they had this best friend, and no matter how long, even if it's a year, it said it was just like they haven't skipped a beat as soon as they get together with each other. That's that where you can count on your friend. And the third finding was that good relationships protect our health and our brain. And these findings all apply to humans, right? We're all humans. And this is those relationships and friends affects your whole body as a human, in particular your brain. What I would like to say is that the one last thing that they talk about in the TED Talk is that he'll say that they actually did a recent study of the millennials. And this is the part that's very interesting. So in the millennials, and I'm gonna hope that some people put this into the chat. What do you think the results showed about the millennials, about what they thought their major life goal is? What do you think the highest percentage was that millennials want as their major life goal? Maybe put some responses in there. All right, have a good job was one. What else do you think millennials think is a major life goal for them? Okay, to be happy. To be married. Have a family. Yep, yep. Financial stability. So I'm going to say bingo on that. Financial stability. 80%, their major life goal, money. Money. And then the second, 50%, they want to make the whole world better. Yeah, we would hope. But actually, 50% said they want to be famous. So 80% of the millennials said money, 50% said they want to be famous. So I just thought that was very interesting. So I do encourage you to actually watch the whole TED Talk, because I'm sure I'm missing really good, important pieces there too. The last person I want to talk about in reference to is Dan Gottlieb. Now, Dan Gottlieb is a practicing psychologist and therapist with more than 40 years of experience. He was best known as the host of the Voices in Family, which was a weekly radio program heard for more than 30 years right here in Philadelphia, where I am, for the WHYY FM NPR affiliate. So some of you may have even heard Dan Gottlieb. He has an acquired disability as a result of a car accident, but he also has a grandson who he's pictured here with, who happens to have autism. And he wrote books, Letters to Sam. And his very personal letters share his thoughts and experiences on living with differences. And this heartfelt message from his book succinctly captures the hopes and dreams of families for their child with a disability. And it speaks to our desire for our children to be connected in a real way to real life and community. And that's the heart of why we did this booklet. You know, people with disabilities a lot of times struggle for that relationship and those friendship buildings and things that, you know, we want, as all humans do want. And so that's why this book has really been developed. And we're going to look into some of the other pieces of this booklet a little later in the presentation as well.
Okay, so, and we're going to add one more. So as we were putting together this friendship toolkit, we used the work of the prior three men and also David Petoniak. So he's an author of a book called The Importance of Belonging. You know, and as I said, it was a reference that we used when we developed this. He travels worldwide to schools and agencies and families, helping to understand the link between the importance of relationships and happiness. And as I said, the TED Talk that Diane is talking about is a fabulous, and I was just happy to see that in order for me to live happy, I don't have to go on a diet. So that's what I got out of the big TED Talk. So that was really great. But David is probably most widely known for his work supporting people experiencing isolation as a result of complex behaviors. So if you're maybe studying behaviors, you'll probably encounter some of David's work. But he believes, and as do we, that it is our collective responsibility to make a difference in the lives of others. Okay, Diane. So again, we were talking about why this resource, why did we think this was important to put out there to support families? So this topic is important for all of us, right? So, you know, we all thrive when we have a good relationship. You know, and especially this is a concern for families that have children with disabilities. You know, uh, is my child going to develop a good friendship, or is he going to be sitting in his room in front of the TV, uh, or isolated? So that was one of the reasons that this resource came about, because we polled a lot of families and they were like, our biggest concern is our kids don't have friends. If I would ask my youth um, what he wants, the first thing that would come out of his mind would be, I want a really good friend. Well, his was, I want to hang out with the cool kids. And I could tell you that story a little later on about who the cool kids were. But the key point in our resource, um, you know, and if you get anything out of this at all today, is that everyone should care about this issue and everyone can contribute to making it better. So the isolation, we can all have contributions to give on facilitating friendships for children, youth, and young adults with disabilities. Go ahead, Diane. Is it moving? No.
There we go. Here we go.
All right. All right. Oh, so this is our table of contents, and we joked about how we moved from doing this in person to online and how different this is for Diane and I, because we're both very visual and people oriented people. So when we do a training, we rely a lot on our audience feedback. So this is the part we were talking about earlier. You know, reading through this. So I would go, you know, the thinking about um, the activity that we did about your best friend, right? So thinking about, you know, how you met, you know, how you get together, how you stay in touch. I want you to look through our table of contents in the sections, you know, the value of friendships, why is friendship development important, who benefits, barriers to friendship development, and the importance of active friendship facilitation. So if you can go ahead, I'm going to have you get in the chat again and like think about um, something that you're interested in exploring in more depth. So if you had this booklet in front of you, what section do you think, you know, looking back at your friendship, what section would you want to explore? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? So go ahead and put that in the chat for me.
Or in your work, if there's
Yeah.
you know something you're doing in your work as a professor or as a student, what one of these sections really jump out at you and you would like to explore more?
Yeah. Yeah. As a teacher, community organizer. So if you have to do community events. 4. I see number 4. Couple 4s, couple 5s. That is true. Keeping it going. So I see a lot of 4s, the 5s, the 6s, and we're going to cover a lot of this as we move through. But almost all people agree that friendships are important to everyone. But we'll probably focus a little bit on the barriers to friendship development, because we know that important to know that what makes it harder for kids with disabilities to sustain friendships. So as we move forward in the next activities, we're going to look at some of those barriers, and then we can talk about the strategies for keeping those going. All right. So as our booklet is set up with our intended audience, and you'll notice we hit everybody, at least we hope we did. Parents, sibling, peers, teachers, support personnel, community, society, teens and young adults. And you can see the symbols. I was actually going to point them out on my screen, so that was really funny. The symbols, the symbols on the PowerPoint here are coordinate with every page in the book and coordinate with our 6 elements that you'll see on the next slide. And they also coordinate with our tip sheets, which will be downloadable also, and that will be in a following slide. And they were just carefully chosen because what we wanted to encompass, what friendship development is important to all, right? And active friendship facilitation is a responsibility of all. Um, and friendships don't always happen automatically for kids and youth with disabilities for a variety of reasons. That's why it's important that we need to actively facilitate the development of friendships. Because think about what we know about the effects of bullying on young people, about, an elderly person in your neighborhood who may be experience uh, debilitating isolation and loneliness. I mean, I have 2 sons on the autism spectrum, got one on one end and one on the other. And our oldest son decided in high school that he was going to try out for the baseball team. Now, I got to give you the picture of him a little bit. He's 6'4" and all arms and legs at this point. And um, and he has motor apraxia, which means his coordination is slightly off, to say the least. But he was determined. He loves baseball, he loves statistics, and he was going to play. So he practiced all summer long. He practiced running. We were at the baseball field. He practiced. And he made the team, and we were all shocked. uh, and then the coach calls us and he says, he made the team. He'll probably spend a lot of time riding the pine, is what he referred to. And I realized that meant sitting on the bench, because his coordination is so bad that it's almost dangerous for him to be out as people are really playing the game. So we talked to our son about it and said, this is probably what's going to happen. And he was like, okay, he was so excited to be part of a team, right? And prior to high school and junior high, he met with a lot of bullying. It was horrible. It was difficult. He'd been suspended for sticking up for himself. So we were excited that he was going to be part of this team. And I will tell you that, and he did get to play, so that he did end up playing quite a few games. He was a fabulous outfielder, turns out. But he developed relationships and friendships within that team that stopped the bullying, right? So when he would go to the cafeteria, he would have kids to sit with, and he would also have kids to kind of mitigate that bullying that would happen. So just think about, as we go through these, some of the barriers, but as an important for all of us to be in on this friendship facilitation for everyone. Again, I want to talk about the 6 elements that encompass research on related to friendship development. You probably recognize these. If you're in child development at all, these are from Eric Carter. They're universal in the establishment of friendships for people across groups or support needs. What we believe that on all of these groups interested in friendship development, we get parents, siblings, peers, school personnel, and communities can contribute ideas and strategies across these elements. So these are kind of the strategies that goes into facilitating friendships. So things like, shared activities, shared interest, a role, part of a team, right? So that was his valued role, was part of a team. Sharing information with each other, like we talked to his coach, we shared information about him. When he had his team, one of his teammates came to pick him up, how do we facilitate that friendship across these elements? as adults, giving them just enough supports, and a reflection on what our role is. So throughout the rest of this PowerPoint, we're going to talk about putting yourself in another person's role. So at the top of each slide, we'll have one of these symbols, and it refers to parents, siblings, peers, school personnel, communities, or youth and young adults. And we're going to ask you to take on that role. Okay, Diane?
Yep. As soon as the PowerPoint lets me
Move forward, right?
move forward. There we go. All righty.
All right.
So the first one we're going to start with, the first element is shared activities. So we would like everyone to put yourself in the parent role. Put that hat on for now. You're going to have 6 hats today. So if you have them, wear them. The first one is parents. So when you think about shared activities, right? These are same activities, same time, same place. We would like you to use the chat to answer the question, what is the parent's role in supporting these activities? What do you think the parent's role? So if you're a parent, it might be easier for you because you may have already engaged in some of this. If you're not a parent, what do you think the parent's role is in supporting activities, shared activities? So I want to give everybody a minute to think about that. Write it in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand, and we would be happy to ask you to unmute yourself to share that vocally if you like. Okay, we have a couple of responses. Anybody raising their hand? Let's see.
Oh, I like that one, Stephanie. Make sure your child is prepared and with a good attitude.
Mm-hmm.
That attitude part's really important when it comes to friendships sometimes.
Oh, yes, it is.
And sometimes there's some explanations on why the attitude may not be as good as we would like it to be.
That's right. Yeah. Letting go. Yeah. That's always a tough one. Let the child try the activity, though they may get hurt in some way. Oh, yeah. Boy, do I know that. I got a story on that one for David. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was around middle school, and a couple girls came knocking up on the door and wanted to take David to the park. And, we're going to the park, and we want to know if David wants to come with us. And of course, my initial reaction, and he's right there, yeah, and I'm like, oh, dear God. He's never really gone with anybody like that before. So, yes, he went, and like any other good mom, I followed and hid behind the bushes and watched him. Yep. Until they got there safely, and then I was okay.
Yeah.
Modeling, introducing yourself, like in the baseball example. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you're absolutely, yeah. So some of the other ideas, and these ideas that you're putting in the chat are wonderful, because what you will notice in the booklet, if you do get the booklet or if you download it, there are several different ideas listed. That's why this booklet is really good, because it does give you initial ideas. We do this presentation to try and get newer ideas and to get and explore other options too, and to help each parent. Oh, thank you, Susan. Very good, Mom. Provide opportunities and experience of children. So, exactly. So a lot of parents' role is we have to provide information and support to identify needed adaptations sometimes and modifications. So if the child uses a wheelchair or any type of, maybe some type of walker or something like that, we have to be able to ensure that activity is going to be able to accommodate them as well. Some other shared activities, inviting others to join in activities such as movies and sporting activities, parties. I was always trying to think of different ideas of those shared activities that I knew David would be excited about doing. So of course I'm at work. I will turn my volume down on my phone because you might be hearing that. So we also need to sometimes, as a parent, we have to put that parent hat on and sometimes talk to other parents too. That's listed in here. You know, we have to talk to the other parents who have kids and making sure that, you know, that they would be inviting their children, you know, like depending on the age of the children, you know, sometimes as a parent, we have to put that role on and, you know, kind of engage the other parent as well into those shared activities. And then sometimes you want to explore community activities where other children might gather. You know, and some of those examples might be museums or playgrounds, a children's theater or a parade. You know, they're just some of those activities that the parent needs to be, you know, doing some of those. So thank you for sharing in the chat for our first element. Is there anything I'm missing on that element or anything, Jane, that you wanted to add? Okay.
No, but we've got about 15, 20 minutes. So,
Yep. So we got to keep it moving. Gotcha.
which is
Next
also
is,
something Diane and I are bad at.
yeah, but we will get through it. All right, shared interest. So knowing the shared interest, I want you now to put that hat on of a sibling. Okay, so you're a sibling, put that hat on. Or maybe if you're not a sibling, or if you can't envision as a sibling, think of it as a close friend or a cousin, family member with that hat on. So shared interest. This is things in common to share and enjoy with others. So the question here is, how can I engage my sibling in a shared interest? Any thoughts in the chat? As a sibling. This might be a little bit of a tougher role. So siblings often know, feel free to engage in the chat if you think of anything. Siblings often know their brother or sister really well and can identify the activities and clubs that may be of interest to their sibling. You know, they're living with them. They know what they like and what they don't like. They also identify where in school or the community those interests might be explored and how to sign up or join. So me as a parent, you know, my David did have a sibling. So some of the ideas that I thought might have been good for David to be a, you know, as a shared interest might not have been what was really cool for that school age, you know, that age group or something. So it was really good to have, you know, the siblings' input on things like that, you know, like, all right, am I on the right track here? You know, I would check in with David's sibling to make sure, am I on the right track with this one or not? So it's really important. Yeah, weekend activities, going shopping. I love some of the ideas in the chat here. And as a sibling, it may be a great way to provide an advocate for their sibling as they participate. Very good. That's right. Very good. Because they also know what their sibling enjoys, dislikes, and how they express themselves too. So there's also a really good role. Again, we talked about how everybody has a role in building up these friendships and relationships. The siblings also are in the helping role naturally, right? So making the transition from helper to friend, you know, is another thought of trying to, you know, where the sibling doesn't want to be the helper, just like the parent. We need to take a step back. So does the sibling to help that friend to kind of move a little bit forward with that. All right, our third one is valued roles for all. And this means valuing and respecting the contributions of everyone. You can create systemic change within the school culture by your actions. So how can peers, all right, your hat, I forgot to put your hat on, you're a peer now. How can peers naturally support others? Any ideas around the peers? Some of you may be in school already and have had experiences with this, or you might still be in school as a college student, or maybe when you're in high school. Is there anything that peers can naturally do to support others? And as you're thinking about that, you want to also think about presuming competence and advocate for others to do the same, right? We need to presume competence. When Jane and I were preparing for this, you know, sometimes as the parent, you know, I always presume competence, but sometimes in school, if a child has a visible disability, for example, my David was born with Down syndrome. So to see David, a lot of what his or you have an idea that he has a disability. Sometimes the peers don't even see that, but adults do. So as a peer, they know David can do this work, right? He can do that. He can do that. That's the peer role. Like, they are doing these things, right? And they're the ones with the student most. And they say, you know what? Yeah, they can play playground at the recess with peers in games that they can be successful. Absolutely, because the adult might say, oh my gosh, they might get hurt. What if somebody uses has like Jane's older son might not have good stability or whatever, the adult might be, oh no, don't let him go outside with recess, or have him make sure he plays with some other smaller activity as opposed to something more active. Where the peers are going to be like, oh, he'll be fine. And if he falls and scrapes his knees, that's okay, right? So the peers really do bring out some of that natural support. So they can really be really engaging. And you know what? The peers are also part of that systemic change. With your experiences as a peer, you're going to see that change as you get older as an adult, to see and presuming that confidence and know that people with disabilities do have a role in all of this. All right, passing the buck to you, Jane, so we can get through this.
Let's go. So share information with each other. This is listed under teachers or school personnel. Schools must create a culture where all are welcome. So if you got your teacher hat on, as a teacher, how do you become knowledgeable so that you can support all of your students? So, go ahead and put that in the chat. How can you become knowledgeable? And if you're a teacher, not only a teacher, but let's think about our school building, our administrators, our leadership, staff must be given training regarding different disabilities and the educational and emotional needs of all students. And we often say training for administrative leadership too, like our principals. We often forget that our culture of our school comes from the top down, right? Like, so having our leadership understanding the importance of presuming competence of children and youth and young adults with disabilities, creating a positive school environment for all learners. Seek information from families, ask questions. You're right, read the paperwork. How many times have I filled out paperwork as a parent? And I fill out a lot of paperwork as a parent with a child with a disability, and I hope that somebody's reading it, right? Read that paperwork.
That was in the chat
Share
too. There was
tips.
another
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Share
And
tips.
there's also 10 minutes left.
Oh, geez. But disability organizations too. You could do school-wide disability activities. So there are lots of things out there. So as your teacher role, you can seek them out. Also as a parent, um, you know, we'll go on. You can go on to the next. We'll move to the next.
Yeah, and there's good ideas in the chat too, so I hope
yeah,
everybody's reading them. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just enough support from adults. So community and society. And I wanted to touch base a little bit. This kind of bridges the gap between school and community and just enough support from adults. Also in a student's IEP, there's a section called, support for school personnel, right? So that's a section in a child's IEP or individualized education plan that is specifically directed at getting information to teachers and support staff inside of schools. So a community and society. So if I were organizing a community event, these are some of the things that I would think about so I can include people, youth, young adults with disabilities. So create opportunities for all people within the community to come together. So not just creating special events or special activities. I'm going to make sure that my activities encompass everyone. So if I were the librarian, how could I create activities in my community that were welcoming to all? So that would be the next hat that we would put on.
I would suggest keep going, and they can just put things in the
Yeah.
chat, and I can highlight if I see anything for you.
Awesome. That will be great. Because one of the things I talk about often in that is just accessibility, right? Making sure that your community event is accessible. Petting zoos are notoriously not accessible. Go ahead.
Sure.
Sure. Thanks.
There we go. There we go.
So here we're talking about, this is part of the teens and young adult hat, but just a reflection, right? So friendships don't just happen. They take time and effort. And our youth and young adult tip sheet was created by youth and young adults. So there was a lot of really great input. But as we sit here and reflect, you know, across the board, across friendships, you know, everybody has a role to play in the development of friendships. Friendships are important to all. You know, everyone benefits when we support a friendship development for kids with disabilities. And now I want you to kind of sit there and reflect on what your role is. You know, if you're a teacher, a parent, professional, a peer, a sibling, you know, what is your role and how are you going to carry this friendship development stuff forward? You can go to the next one.
Well, we'll be wrapping it up soon, so
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
we have, let's see, we're down to about 6 minutes left, so we're doing
We're
pretty
good.
good here. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Diane, when I reflect about making friendships happen, I think
Yeah.
about, it's not just slapping two kids together in the same, right? Making sure that my pre-service teachers are prepared for the classroom. That is so true, right? Like, I mean, by trade, I'm an early childhood educator. That's what I went to school for. I had 6 credits in special education. I had a class in disability. So preparing a student to become a teacher and presume competence of all of her students, and making sure that, just like I said, if I reflect on it, not just sitting 2 kids in a room and saying that's social skills, right? That, you know, friendships happen, we facilitate them, but the true friendship happens naturally with some facilitation, you
Right.
know. So
Mhm.
just thinking about how to do that, and you know, how to set that up. I mean, my son is goes to the library um, as part of an anime club. You know, it's not a specialized for people with disabilities. It was just an interest that he had. And through that, he found out some of the kids that were at the library were also in his school. And he hadn't interacted with them before, but then afterwards, you know, he would see them in the hallways and it would be like, hey, Jacob, what's up? So that was that community involvement. You know, I talked to the librarian, she asked me some questions, so that shared information happened. And then, you know, now he's an integral part. The last week I had to go and find them because they walked down to like the local gaming store or whatever. And I was
Yeah.
like,
That's,
where's my kid?
but it's a natural thing to do, right?
He went with,
Mhm.
and in
Mhm.
his right, he did text me and let me know.
Okay,
So,
good. Well, and I really appreciate Dr. Rutledge. You know, you know, yes, back in the 80s, you didn't get a lot of that. That's right.
no.
So it's good that, you know, that's why you have continuing education. Thank you, God. But, and that's why we continue to, at the Peel Center, try to offer different, you know, tools and resources for everybody. And as you see, these are the strategies for tip sheets, you know. So for each role, there is a tip sheet for each of those roles in this booklet. So I hope we were able to kind of, you know, it's hard to do it virtually, but in the booklet, as you go through it, you know, you can go to whatever role and see some of those tips for parents, the tips for siblings, the tips for the teachers and things like that. And you can be able to, you know what your role can be, whether it be in the classroom or out in the community, because while you might be a teacher in the classroom, you're also going to the grocery store. You're also going to events, you know. There are things that you can do just naturally that way too when you identify different things or you see various things in your community.
Yeah,
And thank you. Share this with your student teachers too.
yeah, and they're all downloadable from the Peel website. But if you would like a hard copy, if you reach out to info.
That'll be at the end. You put it in the chat, but I also have a
Yeah,
slide on that. But
Peel
put it in
Center.
the chat too.
Oh,
That'll be
okay.
good.
Yeah. If you read
So I
out to
hope,
info@peel.org. So
yeah. So we want to try and wrap it up a little bit here because I know we only have a couple minutes left. You know, Dr. Seuss has this very wonderful quote. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And that's from the Lorax, Dr. Seuss. So what we do want to leave you with today is, what can you do to make it better tomorrow, next week, or this month? You know, so I hope, you know, we talked about those barriers a little bit, about those barriers in the beginning, right? Of friendship building, relationship building. We also talked very highly about how everyone has a role in this, building up friendships and relationships. And no matter what, you know, ability you have faced in your classroom or out in the community or as a parent of the child, you know, everyone has a role to help you build up those friendships and relationships. And everybody does want to have a friend or does want some type of relationship. As that TED Talk talked about, we're all human. And that is part of the humanity of us. We do want relationships. We do like that, that friendship building. And so we really thank everybody who did participate and stayed in on our session here. And here's some more of our contact information and a little bit more about Peel as well. And we were able to put this booklet together from funding through the Pennsylvania Developmental Disabilities Council as well. So that would be another resource for anyone out there. So I know we only have 1 minute left, but I didn't know if you had any last thoughts, Jane, or if anybody wanted to put any last thoughts in the chat, we would be happy to hear that.
And if you have any questions that don't that you need a follow-up for, again, if you reach out to info@peelcenter.org, Diane and I can retrieve those from there. You know, and also, you know, if you know, as you read through you can go back through the chat. We'll save the chat, and then that will be accessible also.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Diane and Jane. That was so great. We learned a lot about friendships. Hopefully everybody was able to access everything in the chat. All of the links are also on your program, like Diane and Jane mentioned. There's also the link to the SurveyMonkey and the Act 48 credits. And then the last thing that we put in the chat just now, our next session starts at 12 o'clock, and that is our afternoon keynote. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you, everybody.
We're happy to stay on an extra minute if anybody wants to chat further with us, if you would like.
Sounds great.
But thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference.